Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Vinson Uncovered webinar with Adventure Consultants. I'm Caroline Ogle. I am General Manager here at AC, and I have been planning the logistics for our Mount Vinson expeditions since 2012. And here with me today is Guy Cotter. Over to you, Guy.
Morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Guy Cotter. I'm the CEO of Adventure Consultants. I've been lucky enough to have been to Mount Vinson many times. It's one of the most enjoyable expeditions that I've ever been on, and one of the reasons why I keep returning to Antarctica, and also why we're here to help show you all what it's like going to Mount Vinson, and hopefully you'll get to see what it's like being on the mountain.
Excellent. And so, Guy, AC, you've got a long history on Mount Vinson. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, even prior to Adventure Consultants per se, having gone there, our forebears, Rob Hall and Gary Ball, had spent a lot of time in Antarctica. There had been they'd been climbing on expeditions, working with some of the government operations down there. Gary Ball had been climbing with Walter Bonatti down there. Rob Hall had been there, with the Americans prior to even guiding ascent starting on Mount Vinson. So we've had a very long association with Mount Vinson. We started doing guided ascents in 1990. And since then, we've been in Antarctica almost every season on at least one or two expeditions on Mount Vinson. So we have really enjoyed a long association and watched the evolution of what has happened on Mount Vinson in that time. My very first expedition there was down there in 1994, and there was only myself and one client and two other people on the mountain. There was no one within other people within hundreds of kilometers. These days, it's become a lot more popular, well known, and there are people from all over the world there. However, it still feels like a very remote mountain. You're in the depths of Antarctica. It's a serious mountain, but it's also a very, very beautiful mountain. In the early days, we would fly to an area where we would land in Antarctica, and we're going to go into that a little bit more about the process of getting down there, but we would land on an airstrip, which was a blue ice runway at a location called Patriot Hills. In 2010, that landing strip was moved to a closer location in Union Glacier. And we're going to go through the process of how we actually get to the mountain. But first of all, we have to fly from South America, land on the ice, and then we get in a smaller ski-equipped aircraft to fly to the mountain.
Excellent. And so what effect did that move to Union Glacier have on how the expeditions run?
The move to Union Glacier meant that we had a better runway. The Patriot Hills runway was a crosswind runway. That meant that the wind from the polar plateau would come all the way heading north, go over the Patriot Hills, and then the wind would scour the glacier, revealing a strip of blue ice on which the aircraft could land. But that always meant that there was always a crosswind on that runway, and so the operating parameters were not as good as what occurred with the move to Union Glacier. At Union Glacier, there is an into-wind runway, which means that the aircraft can take off into the wind, land into the wind, and therefore the operating parameters are much higher. It meant there was a lot more reliability for aircraft being able to come and go on a schedule. Now, of course, it is Antarctica. Things change, the weather changes, and sometimes schedules get affected. And I think anybody going to Antarctica has to take this into account with their planning, to recognize that we are going to one of the most wild and remote locations on Earth. And as part of that, then sometimes delays do occur. But with the move to Union Glacier, we've got a lot more reliability, and flights generally go when they're scheduled, or at least within a day or so of when they're scheduled. So we've got to remember that in the early days, Shackleton and co, they thought they were coming home for Christmas, and a year later they're still trying to get home. It's not like that anymore. So that's one of the advantages of modern technology, and the move to Union Glacier has certainly helped with that.
Fantastic. Okay, so a little bit of a rundown about Mount Vinson itself. It's the highest mountain in Antarctica, thus making it one of the coveted 7 summits. Elevation-wise, it's 4,892 meters, and that's just over 16,000 feet. But actually, that doesn't sound very high. But due to the proximity of Mount Vinson to the South Pole, there's a much lower barometric pressure. So the felt elevation is closer to about 5,500 meters or 18,000 feet. So it's a significant difference compared to the actual real altitude. And that's something that you can really feel on summit day. It is a relatively short trip, just 16 days, but as Guy mentioned there, flexibility is key on any big mountain objective, but no more so on the Mount Vinson trip. The key climbing season is between November and January. So that's the Northern Hemisphere winter, but of course, being down in the Southern Hemisphere, that's the summer months, also known as the austral summer. And something that is quite different is due to that you're experiencing almost 24-hour daylight while you're down there. So you may find yourself moving from camp to camp at what seem like strange times in the day, according to your watch. November through January, it can mean that some of those trips can work well with taking time off over the Christmas and New Year period. So that's a nice way to spend the festive season. Antarctica, Mount Vinson itself is located in the Ellsworth Mountains. It's about 700 nautical miles from the South Pole. And a little known fact is Antarctica is technically a desert. It's a polar desert, and it only receives about 2 inches or 50 mil of precip each year. So although there's often a lot of storms in Antarctica, the snow that we do receive is mostly blown snow that's transported rather than actual precipitation falling from the sky. So Guy, if someone's heading over to Mount Vinson, what would be the key skills that they would need to have dialed in?
The ascent of Vinson, people say, is not that technically difficult, but there are real technical elements to it, and we must arrive with established technical skills, and that's cramponing, glacier travel, having experience in snow camping and cold weather, being able to look after yourself in that environment, having the right kit. And we're going to go into something about equipment a little bit later on, but you don't want to arrive in somewhere like Antarctica and be a newbie. You want to go onto a mountain like Vinson and have all of your technical skills dialed so that you can enjoy being there. So doing good preparation on other peaks and a build up to it can really be is absolutely crucial. We climb 1,200 meters of fixed rope during the ascent between camps, low camp and high camp, and we've got to be able to effectively utilize an ascender and be able to descend these fixed ropes as well. So this is not I want to experience Antarctica and I'm going to just go and climb Mount Vinson. This is actually a very, very serious alpine environment where the potential of frostbite is very high if you don't manage yourself well. So we would be looking at people to come on this expedition who have achieved ascents like Mont Blanc, Mount Aspiring, New Zealand, 6,000 meter peaks in Nepal, the likes of Mount Rainier. In addition to that, we would expect everybody to have achieved at least a week-long or 10-day-long mountaineering course, where you specialize in those skills of glacier travel, knowing how to prusik out of a crevasse, knowing how to put up a tent and be able to effectively look after yourself in that environment. And these prerequisites are all well and good, because it's not just about the technical side of it. It's about your physical preparation as well. Before I go to Mount Vinson, I'm doing a lot of training carrying a pack, because we do carry packs and we drag a sled on the lower part of this mountain. You don't necessarily have to have had sled hauling experience prior to. We teach people how to do that. You'll clip a sled onto the back of your pack and we'll drag that up to low camp. But certainly being able to carry a heavy pack is crucial to being able to do this peak, because we have to go quite a long way from low camp to high camp, and we'll see the detail of that in a little while. But if we arrive and we're not fit enough and strong enough, we're just not going to be able to get up the mountain. So we want to see people arrive with the right technical skill set, and as well as the fitness. And you cannot let either of those aspects of your mountaineering skills go prior to coming and doing this trip. And by being fit, of course, the expedition is way more rewarding, and you get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, great. Vinson isn't a place that you want to turn up and learn these skills for the first time or discover that you're not fit enough. So yeah, preparation is key. So there's a huge amount of logistics involved in any expedition, but yeah, heading to Antarctica even more so. So we start the expedition in the town of Punta Arenas, which is in southern Chile. Most flights into there fly via Santiago, which is popular international hub. So often you'll find your international flight comes into Santiago, and then you jump on a domestic flight down to Punta Arenas, also known as Punta. So we tend to have 2 or 3 days there prior to the expedition. There's a lot of preparation to do, including some thorough briefings before heading to Antarctica and gear checks. Now, there's next to no gear stores in Punta Arenas, so it's really crucial to arrive fully prepared with all the gear that you need. You don't want to be spending those last couple of days rushing around looking for that elusive item, and your guides will certainly thank you for being organized. Once the gear is checked, we have it weighed and loaded with our logistics partner, ready for the flight to Antarctica. And from then on, really, we're waiting for the weather call. Sometimes it can come early, so we've got to be prepared for that. And also, there's always the possibility of some delays as well. So again, flexibility is key. If we do have some delays, there's some local hikes that we can do close to Punta Arenas, and also trips to see the penguins. But really, we're just super keen to get on that plane down to Antarctica. So when we do get the call, the flight is, these days, it's in a Boeing 757 aircraft. Up to a few years ago, it was in the Russian Ilyushin carrier plane, but a bit more comfort these days. And you're expecting about a 4.25 hour flight time down to the ice, where you fly onto the blue ice runway, met by some vehicles, head into the Union Glacier camp, usually have a bit of a lunch or something, depending on what time of day you arrive. If the weather's good, we might then be jumping straight on the Twin Otter planes for the flight to base camp, which is a further 45 minutes. Or we might be spending the night at the Union Glacier camp until the weather allows us to fly into base camp. So Guy, what's it like when you land in Antarctica for the first time?
there's no feeling like getting out of the aircraft and realizing where you are. It almost feels like you're on a different planet. The environment is very severe. There's rock and ice everywhere, and I think that surprises a lot of people who think that Antarctica is just a sheet of ice, whereas the Ellsworth Mountains, where we're going to be climbing, is a big long spine, part of the end of the Transantarctic Mountains, and one recognizes straight away that you're in an environment that is like nowhere else, and it does feel like a real privilege to be there. And so, as Caroline said, after we land on the Blue Ice runway and we take the smaller flight over to Vinson Base Camp, then we land on the Branscombe Glacier, and there is Mount Vinson right above us. As we see in this image here, this is one of our base camp tents that we set up for each expedition. So it's real expedition style. We arrive there, we get the shovels out, everyone's involved, and we establish our base camp, which is the sleeping tents. So we have 2 people in each of the sleeping tents, and on the left of this image, over the shoulder of the climber here, is one of our sleeping tents, and the big red tent is what is our dining and cooking tent that we have in base camp. So when we arrive here, we'll spend a few hours just getting set up. We're starting to deal with a little bit of altitude. We're not planning to head away straight away. We've got to do some preparation. Once we arrive, we're getting all of our gear sorted personally, but also the guide on the expedition is organizing the food that's going to go up onto the mountain and some of the equipment. So there is a bit of time that we have here. Then we'll spend some time the day following doing some going over some skills, just making sure that we are all sorted out with the sled that we're going to drag, how to actually put our kit onto the sled, and how much we're going to have in our backpack, and also do a little bit of revision on glacier travel, glacier rescue skills. Because from here on up, we're on glaciated terrain where there is always the possibility of a crevasse encounter. Having said that, on the whole, the route is well established, and the route that we follow will go around all the major crevasse areas. But there's always a possibility we are going through crevasse terrain, so we must be ready for it. But it's a very exciting part of the expedition to arrive here on the mountain after all of the travel to get here to the far end of the earth almost, to then be ready to go and get on with the climb. So we'll spend a couple of nights here before we start to move up onto the mountain.
Fantastic. And could you give us a bit of an overview of the route itself, and then perhaps we can go into a little bit more detail of each stage of the climb?
Absolutely. So I've just been talking about Vinson Base Camp, which we can see there in the bottom right of that image on the Branscombe Glacier. From there, after we've had a couple of days, as discussed, we will move up to low camp. And what we do is we take all of our gear with us for the duration of the climb, all of the food, all of the equipment up to low camp, because we're going to low camp as an acclimatization period. So we'll be there at least a couple of nights, usually 3 nights that we'll spend in low camp. The ascent from Vinson Base up to low camp is actually often quite hot. Here we are in Antarctica, and it's minus 20 degrees overnight. But then during the daytime, if there's no wind, it can be very, very warm. So we've got to ensure that we've got everything we need for when it's cold, but then you've also got to carry it when it's really warm. But, it's part of being low on the mountain on Mount Vinson. As you can see in this image here, we've got the sleds that we're dragging, and we generally do about a 60% carry on the back and about 40% of the load in the sleds. And we're taking all that personal gear, but everybody is also carrying some of the group gear and food. And this will include tins of fuel, It'll include food for the mountain. So everybody's involved in helping share that load. Having said that, we do have some caches on the mountain at low camp and high camp, where we have our tents and we have most of the equipment and quite a lot of the food, but we still need to replenish food on each expedition and fuel. And so when people are preparing their equipment, it's really important to recognize how much all of your gear, how much room it all takes in your backpack, because sometimes people might think that gear isn't going to fit into their backpack as well as group gear, and that's why it's very important that we have a large 85 to 100 litre backpack. Everybody's got all of their equipment well organised and in stuff bags, so that compression sacks to make it smaller. And then we will be giving everybody a list of all of the equipment that they would need and how we allocate that equipment. For example, having a small duffel bag to have on the sled for when we go to low camp. So we'll take about 6 to 7 hours to get to low camp. We are dealing with a bit of altitude. It's a bit of a walk. It's a great day out in the mountains, as you can see in this image. Here we are going up towards Mount Vinson, which we can actually see the summit high above us here, but it's still 2,500 meters of climbing above us to get to the summit. So it's quite a long way, and we just break it down into the various camps.
Yeah, thank you. And so you mentioned that we head up to low camp and we kind of use low camp for a period of acclimatization. So is it a sort of an advanced base camp in a way?
Yes, you could call it an advanced base camp, and it's in that we spend some time there to acclimatize, and we also do some preparation for moving higher onto the mountain, where we've got to go up to do some training on the fixed ropes that go between low camp and high camp. Sometimes we'll go up towards high camp, up the fixed ropes, and leave a cache of food and fuel that we'll pick up on the way through to high camp. So, we're having to spend a few days just getting our bodies ready for the next leg of the climb. We're also looking at the weather forecasts because it's middle of Antarctica. It's a great environment. But we're not able to just race on up there because we've already climbed up to Camp 2 at 2,800 meters, and it takes the body a while to adjust to that. And going up to the high camp, where we're not wanting to just jump straight on that and go straight up there. We have to prepare ourselves first.
Sure. And there's the old adage that expedition runs on its stomach. So can you tell us a bit about what kind of food we can expect on the Vinson climb?
Yes, like any true expedition, it's really about the eating and being properly hydrated and looking after ourselves. So we're going to see a little bit of what the camp looks like and where we do our cooking shortly. But as you'll see here in this video that we're about to play, we have these tents that we establish at low camp, similar to what we use at high camp, and this becomes a dining cooking tent. The food is well prepared in advance by us, so we would have a whole selection of different types of quality food, as you saw in that last shot. That was the pizza. We make sure that we encourage everybody to look after themselves with good nutrition and hydration by ensuring that there is enough good food to go around. Now we're going to have a look at what it looks like inside a dining tent and cooking tent. So I'll just add to that because we are spending a bit of time up here, it's a place for everybody to come into the dining tent for meals and chat, and we have some great conversations. We solve all the problems of the world before getting on to the actual climbing. And there have been times that we've been here in these camps where the weather comes in, we've got to stick around and endure storms. All the team members are asked to help pitch in with putting up tents, with building snow walls. We cut out blocks of ice to put around the tents in case of strong winds. And during a storm, we're all involved with looking after the well-being of the camp. But I mean, that's the beauty of this expedition, is that it is a real expedition. We're really expeditioning in the true sense of it. You're right out there in the elements, and every team member is a part of that process. We all rely on each other to ensure our success. So it's a really big part of climbing Vinson. I call it advanced camping, where if we establish good camps and we do that properly, we can hunker down during storms and then pop up afterwards and carry on climbing.
That's great. And that's where having some good food is key when you've got to hunker down for a few days. So the weather's come right and we're ready to move up to high camp. What does that stage of the climb look like?
As I mentioned before, we're spending a few days at low camp just to acclimatise and prepare ourselves to go up to high camp. And generally that would involve at least a day going up the fixed ropes as preparation, maybe drop a cache of food and equipment higher up. And then when we do come to climb up to high camp, we're having to break down and pack away all of the camp at low camp. We don't just leave it up because a storm might come along and blow it all over. So we're all involved with packing up. We generally have a nice lunch because we're not getting the sun at low camp until about 10 in the morning anyway. And this is what Caroline was referring to, the different timings of the day when we're moving. And that's all related to when the sun goes behind the mountain, because when we're in the sun or the sun's on us, shining on us, then it can be relatively warm, as I mentioned. But as soon as the sun goes behind the mountain, the temperature drops. So we're talking, it can be as cold as minus 30 degrees when the sun goes behind the mountain on a very clear day. We're leaving low camp dressed up in our Gore-Tex and gloves and hats and everything. We've got to be prepared. As soon as the wind comes up, it'll get very, very cold. If there's no wind, it's very, very warm. So we're having to manage our thermoregulation very well, which is a big part of being on this climb is our self-management. So really understanding that if you start to get cold, you deal with it, just to ensure that you don't end up with a frostbite problem later on. When we're climbing from low camp, we've got about 45 minutes to an hour walking on the glacier before we start climbing up this fixed rope that gets us up to high camp. Now, this is a big day. It may not look very steep, but we're carrying a reasonable amount of gear. We've got all our personal gear, plus probably about 5 kilograms each of group gear to take up to the high camp. And again, this comes or it reinforces why we want to have all of the right equipment. We're going to talk more about equipment later on, but make sure we don't have too much and don't have too little. So it's a real discipline, which the guides will help everybody to ensure that they're appropriately carrying the appropriate gear and the amount of gear. So when we climb up the fixed ropes, it can sometimes get windy towards the top. There's often a breeze higher on the mountain as we're climbing up. And there aren't many places to stop. We have to be quite disciplined when we pull off the climbing rope to go onto some small ledges where we'll have some lunch and some drinks. Again, personal management is important. We don't want to drop a water bottle or something vital as we're climbing up the slope. We're getting to higher altitude, when we get to the top of the ropes, we've still got another couple of hours of climbing up to the high camp itself. And that is when people are starting to get a little tired and we're exposed to the elements. So again, good management is very important. We'll make sure that we eat and drink when we reach the top of the fixed ropes. There's a nice area for us to spend some time, sort out our gear before moving on. And in about 8 or 9 hours, we would be arriving at high camp. And when we arrive at high camp, we do have to go through the process of establishing our camp at that elevation as well, and that's setting up the tents. And we'll be melting snow to make fluids and so on. So it's a big climbing day. It's a really pivotal day on the expedition to get this right, to look after ourselves well enough that when we arrive in high camp, we're not feeling too gassed. But the views as you get higher on the mountain just get better and better. The polar plateau is right out there in the distance, and you feel that you get a real sense of being on a very high mountain, on this mountain chain. You're not jammed in amongst other mountains so much. It really is truly spectacular.
Sounds like it's really key to arrive in high camp with some gas still in the tank, ready to set up the camp there, because no Sherpas on Mount Vinson, so we've got to do it all ourselves, eh?
Absolutely. It's real expeditioning.
And you mentioned there about personal management. There's some really strict protocols that we need to follow to keep Antarctica the pristine and special place that it is. So I'm sure lots of people are wondering how we deal with toileting and waste management on the mountain.
No, it's a good point, Caroline. And it's one of the aspects of Vinson that is truly remarkable. In the 30 years that I've been going there, you really don't see virtually any sign of human passage. And that is because of the strict protocols that we and other climbers will have around how we deal with our waste. Down in Antarctica, when we're on the mountain, we are utilizing wag bags, which is for solid waste, human waste. We go into the wag bag and we store those, and we remove them all from the mountain afterwards. And there are certain places on the mountain where we pee. So we would actually be stopping at one of those designated areas while we're climbing between base camp and low camp, and all the way to the summit. There are designated areas just to pee between those locations. If you need to go to the loo, have a pee, then you'll be either using a wag bag or a pee bottle so that you can deposit that waste in the appropriate place. When we leave the mountain, we carry all of the solid human waste that is in the wag bags down with us to base camp. But it's actually not as bad as it sounds, because it's so cold there that as soon as you utilize the wag bag, then everything freezes. It's very easy to transport. So this is one of the areas of responsibility that has proved can be done in one of these pristine mountain environments. And I think Vinson is the best of any mountain I've been to, with how that's been managed over the years.
That's great. So now we've got a video of what it actually looks like to climb the fixed ropes. So here we go.
I get excited just looking at that again. I mean, it's such a neat part of the climb where you get some elevation, where you can actually see low camp in the distance out in the middle of the plateau, well behind us there. But it's you really feel like you're on the way up the hill. The climbers here, the technique we need to use in addition to utilizing the ascender on the fixed rope is being able to walk with a heavy pack on this sort of angle slope. We tend to use the duck foot method as often as not as we're climbing up here. So that's something that everybody needs to be well versed at, is how to work with a fixed rope, how to use an ascender, how to do a changeover. And also on the descent, we're using the arm wrap method as opposed to a rappel device in most cases. So anybody who has not specifically done this training would need to do that prior to coming along, because it's not the sort of place where you want to try and develop those skills when you've never done anything like it before.
Yeah, for sure. So duck foot cramponing, fixed rope climbing, and descent, all really key skills to make sure you have fully dialed in. So you've come off the top of the fixed ropes and heading into high camp. That just, the photos just keep looking more and more amazing.
Absolutely. Here we've got some climbers up at high camp, and we've got Mount Shin in the background there. That's sometimes occasionally climbed. Obviously, Vinson is the one that is most people come for. We are at a reasonable elevation of about 3,800 meters, and we'll generally plan to arrive here at about 9 or 10 at night, towards 11. But as you can see, like in this image, you've got full sun up there, probably a lot more sun than we get lower on the mountain. In fine weather, it's a stunning, beautiful place to be, but it also is exposed to wind. And when we arrive here, we have to be very disciplined with looking after ourselves and preparing the camp. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a cache up there that includes our tents and stoves and so on. So we're not having to lug all of that stuff up and down. But again, we'd be having everybody involved in the process of getting prepared for the night ahead. Now, in general, we would prefer to spend 2 nights at high camp before we go to the summit. And that would just be to help consolidate our acclimatization, so that when we do go to the summit, we've had a bit more time there. But sometimes the forecast dictates that we have to go the day after arriving, and that takes a little bit of discipline and fortitude, and again comes back to strength and fitness to be able to get up and keep moving. But ideally, with the right sort of forecast, we'd have a couple of nights here, and then we'd be getting prepared to go to the summit. When we go to the summit, we're taking fluids, food, all of our clothing, a little bit of emergency equipment. The guide will be carrying an emergency bothy bag. We have communications, we've got radios that we're in constant contact with other people on the mountain, and satellite phones and so on. So we do have communications. Prior to heading out for the summit, we'll be having a good breakfast, getting everybody geared up to go. And this is, we're dealing with altitude, looking after our own hydration and our own well-being is really important. And this is where prior experience comes in, knowing what layers you should be wearing, knowing that when you start to overheat that you should, change layers, or the opposite, when you're getting a bit cold, put layers on immediately. We're all roped together, so we are very in close proximity. But as a guide, I can't tell how somebody down the rope is feeling, whether they're getting cold hands or not. So we do a lot of communicating on ensuring that everybody is appropriately attired and is drinking enough and eating enough, because it is a long day up to the summit, and we want to just go slowly and surely to make our way up there.
Yeah, definitely don't see any bear skin showing in that photo of those climbers there. So yeah, what does Summit Day look like? What are you carrying? How long does it take?
Okay, so we're busting out of high camp generally about 8 or 9 in the morning. The sun hits about 6, and that's when we start to make our preparations. And it's actually really warm inside the tents while, when the sun's out, and then you'll hop outside and realize it's, minus 25 or whatever. So there's a bit of a contrast to being outside. Uh, as you mentioned, Caroline, not much skin exposed. We wear a face mask. We've got our goggles on. Generally, we're starting off well wrapped up in a lot of our clothing, maybe all of it, sometimes not all of it. So we've got the likes of sometimes our insulated pants, overpants. We'll have a down jacket on, maybe even a Gore-Tex as well. A good hat is really important up there. The goggles clearly are important, but we've also got to have spares in case their goggles fog up or what have you. Gloves will usually be in liner gloves with either a thick mountaineering glove or a expedition mitten. Sometimes it's warmer at high camp than that, and we can leave with less layers on that we might have to layer up higher up on the mountain. It is a long way. We're starting to feel the effects of the altitude, even if we've had a couple of nights at high camp. And so the pace is not, what we would be doing on the lower part of the mountain. And this is where one of those climbs where you really have to grind it out. You've just got to have that stamina to keep going slowly all day, stop regularly every hour, and we'll eat and drink, and we'll work our way up towards the summit. And so we're not carrying very much, but we do have to have enough fluids to get us through the day. We've got to make sure that those fluids are wrapped up in an insulated container, a cover for your water bottle or a thermos, because it is very cold, and we want to make sure that we're not carrying a block of ice around in our pack. Regular snacking. I really encourage people to have snacks in their pockets so that every time, even if you just stop for 30 seconds, you can take a bite and then carrying on, rather than just stopping and having a big meal, every few hours. So that's the key to ensuring you've got the energy, having the likes of a goo, energy gel, good hydration drinks. And this is what we've got to focus on in our training and the build up to it is for this day, especially to know that we can do, a 9, 10, 12 hour day, that we've got the stamina to do that. So we're heading high on the mountain, up a big glaciated open region with peaks all around us, the summit of Mount Vinson being one of them. And we'll have a look at what it's like getting closer to the summit. So here we are up on the summit ridge. This is where we've changed from walking just on glaciers and steeper snow slopes towards the summit ridge. And the summit ridge, the skyline traverse is stunningly beautiful. You get to see in all directions. It's a little bit technical in that we've got to climb around some rocks. There's a lot of variety. We're occasionally putting in a sling on a rock and clipping that between the ropes that we've got through towards the summit. So instead of just an endless snow slope and false summits, this makes for a very exciting summit. We've got about an hour along this ridge before we do arrive on the summit itself.
And what are the key technical skills that are needed to be used through this section?
As you'll see in this image, we've got the climbers are now using an ice axe. So obviously being able to self-arrest should a slip occur is vital. Lower down on the mountain, we're often just using ski poles for walking along on the lower angle. But up here, we've got to be able to clip the rope between anchors, and this is something that you need to practice as well. If you're wearing mittens, that activity is actually quite challenging if you've never done it before. And again, that's something that we just have to practice. How do you clip and unclip a rope wearing mittens? It can be done. You just got to practice. Sometimes on a warmer day, perhaps like the one in this photo, people are using just a high quality heavy mountaineering glove, which has increased dexterity. But on a very cold day, we must do that with mittens.
And with a bit of rock in the background there, confidence with crampons on mixed terrain looks like it'd be vital as well.
True that, Caroline. That's that's important as well. I mean, most of the time we are on the snow, but there are sections where you're climbing up and over rocks. It's not too technical, but considering where we are and the fact that we've already had a long day up to this point, being really good on your feet with solid cramponing skills is vitally important. We are up on a ridge where there is some exposure, so this is where prior climbing experience and mixed terrain is going to be really crucial.
Right, and then here we are on the summit. What's going through your mind at this moment, Guy?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what was going through my mind at that moment, but it is certainly a joy to arrive on this summit. In that the lead up along the summit ridge to the summit is possibly not as physical as some of the other parts of the climb. So you're getting a chance to see the views, to see where you are, to revel in the pleasure of being up here. You've got great views all around. Really neat to see a group get to the summit and everybody, enjoy that success. It's very, very fulfilling. Generally, it's reasonably cold up around the summit of Vinson. I know that's, it's not an understatement. It can be, in the -30 range. But if it's not too windy, that's not too bad. And we get a chance to take a photo, to do what we have to do on the summit, and enjoy the moment. We spend a little bit of time up there and really appreciate what we've done, because after this point, the descent from the mountain is not especially long, because obviously we're going downhill. We've only got a couple of camps to go through, and the way that we would do that is we would drop back down to high camp to spend the night, and of course we'd all celebrate that with a good feed and a good sleep. Following morning, we'd get up, we'd pack away to camp, and then we go all the way back down to the base camp. And at that point, we would await logistics to come and collect us and return us back to Punta Arenas. So this moment on the summit, we've worked really hard to get here. Everybody has probably learned something about the style of expeditioning, because, to be honest, a lot of people don't get out there and do that style of expeditioning anymore. And that, again, is one of the things we enjoy about reaching a summit and having shared that experience with everyone.
Amazing. Great. So as we've touched on quite a few times, doing physical training for Mount Vinson is absolutely crucial. Your physical fitness is one of the main factors of the expedition that's within your control. You can't control the weather, you can't control conditions on the mountain, but you can control how fit you turn up. So you'd be looking at doing a minimum of 3 or 4 months solid training prior, but ideally 6 months or more. As Guy mentioned, hiking with a pack, really replicating the type of fitness that you'll be using on the mountain. So yeah, just getting out there. If you are lucky enough to have some hills and mountains on your back doorstep, then all the better, but also use what you've got. If it means that you're doing laps up your stairwell in your building, then so be it. But we also really encourage getting out for some weekends in the real mountains, practicing on uneven terrain, and just building up that strength. Core strength is really important as well, for shouldering those heavy loads. for digging and building snow walls and for hauling a sled. You'll find a program that is tailored for mountaineering fitness, such as those from the Uphill Athlete, will really bring all of these elements of fitness training together. And we really encourage you to jump on and get one of their memberships. You can get a discount through using the Adventure Consultants code, ADVCONS at checkout. And they have some amazing coaches that will keep you on the right track. If you can do some sled training, then that's obviously great to know what that feels like to haul a sled before you're heading out of base camp up to low camp. So just getting a kid's snow sled, loading that up onto a harness system and pulling that on a beach is fantastic training for a bit of resistance, or on grass. And as Guy mentioned through the whole climb really, but especially on summit day, your nutrition is key. So we really recommend using the goo gels, working out what bars work for you, maybe the energy chews work for you better than a gel, using those while you're training, see what you can actually get down when you're pushing your body to the max, and know that you're going to be able to eat those things when you're on the mountain. That's really crucial. And so, as well as physical training, we've mentioned that you'll need to spend some time getting your equipment sorted for the climb. Obviously, there's lots of items which are really generic expedition climbing items, like crampons and ice axe and a sender and so on. But Guy, what are the key things that people really need to get right for Vinson, and what mistakes have you seen being made in the past?
In addition to the normal mountaineering gear that you might wear, being shell clothing with some light insulated layers underneath, for example, climbing pants and a fleece jacket, we're adding additional insulation layers to this, being the insulated pants or light down pants and a down jacket. We've got to be really aware of weight and bulk. Now, a lot of people will go into a shop and they'll get sold 8,000 meter jacket and pants, which if you try and get those into your pack, you're not going to have much room for anything else. The actual amount of insulation, additional insulation we're going to need, say in the down pants, is a very relatively light down pant. And our equipment lists go into a lot more detail about this, but you need to have full zip down pants so that you can actually take them off when you get hot, or put them on when you're cold without having to take your boots and crampons off. Now, it's surprising how many people arrive without having worked that out. And same with your Gore-Tex overpants. They've got to be full zip so you can take them on and off. Then, because you've got these additional layers, down jacket, down pants, your harness needs to be big enough to go over the top of all that stuff. So what might have been your normal climbing harness that's worked perfectly for you for years, and all of a sudden people go to put it on and realize they can't fit it on over all this gear. Climbing boots, we're using an 8,000 meter boot down there. The reason is that you want to keep your feet warm, and a lighter boot could lead to frostbite. Now, if you're just buying that equipment for the first time, one important thing to look out for is that your crampons will actually fit your 8,000 meter boots, because the sole is generally much longer. The whole bulk of it is much greater. Maybe your crampon bar doesn't extend that far to adjust your crampons, and the strap might not go around that bigger boot. So these are a couple of minor but major points to check prior to coming on the expedition. You'll have equipment that might be new to you, face mask, how we use that and how you use that with your goggles without them fogging up. Again, practice is really, really important. Some people may have never used a pee bottle before, but that's really vital for being able to relieve yourself in the middle of the night or whatever. So, some of those things are new. I've already talked about mittens, having to actually be able to be kind of dexterous with the use of those mittens, having a large enough backpack that you can fit everything in. Being well organized with your stuff bags is crucial, so that you've got all of your, say, for example, here, your socks and your undies in one bag, and you've got your down gear, squashed in a compression sack in another bag, so that when you're in a tent, you don't just arrive and then explode everything all over the tent and mix it up with your tent mate. You kind of know where everything is. You got it organized. You know what's in the top pocket of your pack. You know where everything is. You've got your jacket, which has got your hat in there, and it's got your gloves in there, in the pockets, all ready to go. You have systems that enable you to be really efficient. So these are just a few of the aspects that we've got to be conscious of. As I mentioned earlier, the guide on the expedition will go through a kit check prior to the expedition starting when you're in Punta. Just got to be very wary that it's very difficult to get additional equipment down in Punta Arenas. And if you turn up and you don't have the right gear, you may not get the gear. And there have even been people who have been left behind because they haven't turned up with the right equipment. Because it's just too dangerous to go there without it. So again, we work with everybody before the expedition with equipment lists and recommendations. And you can always give us a call, arrange a call to have a discussion about gear specific to this expedition.
Yeah, and carrying your climbing boots as carry-on the plane is a hot tip as well, isn't it, Guy? Because you might be able to scrape together the other items, but to be able to find a pair of boots that fit you and are well broken in, its chances are slim.
Absolutely, it's the one item of equipment that we have got to be very familiar with, and also with those boots, make sure that you spend quite a bit of time breaking them in. If you need to tape your feet, you've worked out where that is prior to the start of the trip. You don't want to get blisters on day one and ruin your expedition in that respect too. So again, some more hot tips there.
Right. So what is it that makes AC's approach to Mount Vinson different from others who are out there? The first has to be our world-class guides. Last season we had Guy himself down leading an expedition, as he did the season prior as well. And Luis Benitez was returned to our guiding team last year as well. So, and in the past, we've also had Mike Roberts, Dean Staples, Lydia Brady. These are all guides who have got multiple ascents of not just Vinson, but Mount Everest and the other 7 summits. And they're also really fun people to spend time in the mountains with. So really can't emphasize that enough. As we do have a long history on the mountain, we have proven tactics for our approach to the climb. So it's not our first rodeo. We've got 3 decades on the mountain, as well as having your world-class guides with you on the mountain. You've got the backup of our team back here in New Zealand. So we are constantly analysing the weather forecast throughout the expedition and talking to your guides daily to feed that through. Often the forecasts that are provided in Antarctica are only looking at the next couple of days of weather, whereas we're looking about a week out. So we can really see where those weather windows or storms are developing, and we know whether, we've got to move up the mountain now, or we can wait a few days and build our acclimatization. So that really increases our level of success. We really vet our climbers who come to the expeditions. We know that this is a huge investment for you, not just time and money, time away from family. So you want to make sure that you are coming on a trip that has got people with the appropriate level of skill and experience for the objective. Our food and equipment is top-notch. As you can see, we have the photo of Guy serving up a pizza and some red wine in low camp. You can also expect some fresh meats and vegetables, which are obviously frozen, taking them down to the ice. But, you know, we really put a lot of effort into planning our food for these trips and constantly upgrading our equipment and our tents. Obviously, you want to make sure that they are ready to survive anything that Antarctica is going to throw at us. We do also have the caches of equipment on the mountain. So our tents and some stoves and some equipment and a bit of food are at each camp. So that does reduce somewhat the loads that you need to carry. Do obviously still need to become prepared to carry a decent load, but that does take the load off just slightly. And this really is a true expedition experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. Really, it's not like climbing in Nepal where you've got a lot of Sherpa support. You're really relying on yourself and your teammates to have this amazing experience in Antarctica. And last but definitely not least is the exceptional pre-trip support you get from our office here in New Zealand. We'll set you up with your own personalized app for your mobile, which will have your full itinerary, details of the climbing route, all of your equipment list, all of the documents that you need. They'll be at your fingertips. You've got your dedicated expedition liaison who is just a phone call or an email away. And we know that life is super busy, and as well as fitting in all your training and work and family commitments, we just really try and do everything we can to make the organizational aspect of the expedition as easy as possible. For a lot of people, heading to Antarctica is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So you might want to make the most of your time down there by combining some other expeditions or experiences on the ice. So there's the option to ski the last degree to the South Pole. So that's an add-on expedition, which if you were looking to complete the Explorers Grand Slam, which is the 7 summits and both poles, then that's a great opportunity to combine those two expeditions. If you just want to tick off the South Pole, then we can arrange for you to do a flight. And sometimes there's also the opportunity to actually overnight at the South Pole as well. And then two of our absolute favorite add-on expeditions are the Climb Antarctica and the Ski Antarctica programs. And these are literally heading out and climbing and skiing objectives that just suit whatever your goals and experience are. So you might actually be climbing or skiing some first ascents or descents, which is, you know, just there's nowhere really on Earth that's going to be so accessible to be able to achieve those. And just the feedback we've had from those trips has been amazing. And last of all, if you want to make the most of your acclimatization and tick off another of the 7 summits, you can head to Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America, straight off after coming off Mount Vinson, and yeah, combine those two expeditions. Looking at dates, this year we've got 2 options. One's a pre-Christmas option, which also then ties into the South Pole last degree if you want to combine both, or for those who want to have Christmas at home, but still take advantage of any time off over the New Year's period. We've got the second expedition kicking off on 27th of December and heading through into early January. So if you want to talk to us some more about any of these expeditions, you can book a call with either myself or another of the team at this link here, adventureconsultants.com/call us, and book in a time slot. We'd love to connect with you and answer any further questions that you've got, or help you put together your training plan to get you to Mount Vinson. So that's just about us for today. Thank you, everyone. Back to you guys, just to wrap up.
Yes, I think if I wanted to, summarize what it is about climbing Mount Vinson, I think it's coming back to that real expeditioning, the fact that it's an adventure of the highest degree. Even though we've been there before and climbed it for you on your first time to go to Antarctica, it really is an incredible experience and a privilege to be in Antarctica, and to have the objective of climbing Mount Vinson in true expedition style is quite unique in today's world, with mountaineering having maybe got a lot more people involved in some areas. You still have to be a mountaineer to climb this mountain. I think the preparation that everybody has to put in to get there is paid off, and by getting to the summit and realize that you've really earned it. But at the same time, it's not unachievable, and we're really happy to work with everybody to ensure that they're at the right stage to come and enjoy this expedition. So we hope that you've enjoyed this webinar. It's certainly been fun discussing the mountain. I get excited just thinking about what a great place it is to go. So we appreciate you listening, and give us a call.
Thanks, Guy, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll see you next time.